Welcome. This is Naomi, Rubbra and Leopold Taylor, who are jointly and severally known as People Matter as a practice. But I believe that you're working elsewhere as well at the moment. I think, Naomi, you're at Levitt Bernstein still, are you?
That's right, yeah.
And Leopold?
Well, I'm actually working on a startup completely separate to architecture. So I'm in sort of the sustainable food business, trying to get people to eat insects.
Okay, yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Now, your scheme, Streets Are Made for Walking, I'm looking at it on another screen as we speak. Interested to see this because it's a part of London, which I know, and it's a part of London which you live in. I mean, Naomi, your dissertation medal-winning project last year was about the Elthorne estate and where you now live. And this scheme of yours, which is really based on the Holloway Road, is familiar, I think, to a lot of our readers, but really is just as a place that you pass through at speed. And you don't really, it's on the Great North Road. It's going all the way to Edinburgh, basically, and it's the way out of London. So, but what a lot of people don't realise is just what a lot of stuff happens on that street. Very interesting shops, very interesting things going on. It's got a School of Architecture. It's got tube stations. It's linked, and of course it passes through a very residential area, which is part of what you were saying in your project. And I suppose what's important to say at the outset of this is that it is the Holloway Road. It's a very wide road in places as it comes out of London, so therefore it lends itself to the kind of treatment you're giving, which I'll ask you to explain in a moment. But also it could, in a way, be any street, any city, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think what this project is doing is it's actually describing a framework. I think we'd call it a framework for how to capitalise on this sort of newfound condition that we've seen all around us during COVID. And then this framework would hope to accelerate this transition towards greener, healthy, happier streets. And certainly, I think all of us can relate to now swapping out our car and tube journeys for a pair of running shoes and a bike. And we've seen our streets suddenly open up, become cleaner, attracting new ecologies and habitats, and become safer places to be. And certainly for local communities, they've become a real asset for that space outside your front door that could now be used. And I think you're right, this was a template that we applied to Holloway, but certainly with TfL's projections of seeing 10 times increase in cyclists and 5 times increase in pedestrians over the coming years, this is a template that you could be harnessed across many high streets across London, across the UK and even across the world. And, you know, this isn't a new idea, but certainly for us in our locality, it's something that would help our well-being and our quality of life for sure.
Well, I think that's one of the things which the judges picked up on, which is obviously for Rethink, there were a number of like greening the streets proposals came in, but this is on quite a high level of detail. I mean, it seriously is. And also you're suggesting phasing, which is quite important, I think. So obviously at the moment there's temporary measures in place to make more space for cyclists and pedestrians, horrible plastic barriers and things. You're seeing then the next stage after that, whereby these moves are made permanent, and then you start to make this public realm and places to meet. Can you sort of describe briefly, I don't know which of you wants to do this, but just sort of the kind of feel of these new areas of, if you like, almost like linear public realm you're creating here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the whole drive by the city and Transport for London to create these temporary networks, obviously, you know, we're hugely supportive of. It's really this question of how to create you know, quality public space alongside these temporary networks. And I think the temporary word is quite critical for us, and actually what the problem is. We don't want it to be temporary. We want to solidify these measures and make them permanent, but also take it a step further. So yeah, so our proposal, as you say, is split into 2 phases. The first phase is really about taking the existing proposals and bringing together stakeholders from the local authority, the community, also designers, to develop spaces and neighborhoods that are actually bespoke in some way to the community, that really serve the issues voiced by the community. And as a result, develop quality public space alongside these networks. And the first phase is 5 years, sort of in the proposal between now and 2025, and also involves a lot of testing and actually observation. I think architects tend to go in with, you know, almost a godlike sense that they know what's right, but actually, you know, talking to the community and observing how the spaces are currently used.
And actually, sorry, on that, throughout COVID, we've seen this happen, and we've seen local agency and the ability to quite quickly change your immediate surrounding to meet yours and your neighbour's needs. And you know, we see this in our estate. Walking out down the street, suddenly there's chalk everywhere, there's children being able to play on these streets safely, so it's really harnessing all of those lessons.
Well, that's important, isn't it? Because I mean, had you proposed this time last year, I mean, there'd be a lot of people, I would imagine, saying it can't possibly work because of this, that, and the other. And then suddenly we're seeing that actually it can, because measures have been put in place because of a national emergency, which shows it can be done. Obviously, just in basic, you know, space provision means, and so therefore things start to look more practicable all around. I mean, there's one thing about this scheme in particular, well, of course, which is it is that major route out of London, and you are, I think, showing it as being only public transport up the Holloway Road. That's quite a challenge, given the fact that it's a kind of trunk route. But I think that, do you think that's actually practicable?
Well, I think
here specifically, I know it's a template for elsewhere as well.
Of course. I think what we were also discussing was actually times of day, and obviously it's a primary service route. I think we note down in the entry that it would be for distribution and public service. But certainly you have a point, and I think this is when the template is going to have to be flexible and realistic. To where it stands in the city and what artery it's lying on.
But don't forget that, as you know, I mean, not that far north of here, where your scheme is, the A1, which is what this road is, narrows down to 2 lanes through Hampton Garden suburb.
Yeah.
And that seems to work just fine. It's very odd. It's always struck me as curious that thing works very well in London.
Yeah.
You'd expect it to be a multi-lane highway, but it isn't, because it can't be. So up there it works. So I'm thinking, well, you're proposing a 2-lane road here.
We're also talking about this in the context of, I guess, transportation more generally. You know, people are looking for more sustainable ways to get around. Yes, people might need to, you know, travel out of London, of course, and we'll take the car to do that. But you know, beyond COVID, once COVID, you know, is in the back of our minds, you know, we would expect people to be taking public transport more, you know, to take the train up to Cambridge or wherever. So we're also thinking about it in that context.
Yeah. And then finally, beyond that, an interesting aspect of your scheme is that there's a final phase, if you like, where you're suggesting that neighbourhoods such as you're proposing here can then link up, as it were, I don't know what the word is, circumferentially. Let's just say not radially. In other words, roads like this are always coming out from the centre.
Yeah.
You're suggesting that actually the centre becomes less important.
Yeah.
Slightly outer areas become more important. Can they start to link up? I think that's in your scheme too, isn't it?
Absolutely. So this is much more in phase 2, at least in the proposal. So it's really about taking the existing network of proposed, you know, temporary interventions and extending them, as you say, between neighbourhoods in London's periphery. And I think part of the idea of that is to increase London's polycentricity and maybe decrease the demand into the city centre. So you're not having loads of people jumping onto a tube to get into the centre, and obviously, you know, people are working more from home. People are using their neighbourhoods more. So to be able to link up neighbourhoods and increase London's walkability and cyclability you know, along with that, I think is a big part of the proposal for us.
So therefore, I mean, if you come back to this particular street, if you know this bit of North London at all, you think of it as being a canyon, which divides the communities to either side of it. But here, I think what you're suggesting is that it starts to become, those communities start to move in on it from both sides, and then link up with other communities doing similar things elsewhere around London, and it becomes less of a divider and more of, I suppose, a focal point.
Yeah, it becomes optimized for human use and for people, and that's exactly the idea.
And can I ask, just Leopold, given what you said at the beginning about your own special interest at the moment, can local food production, for instance, come into this, do you reckon?
100%, yes, yeah. I mean, insects are, you know, extremely sustainable, extremely efficient to farm. You can farm them vertically, so perfect for, you know, urban agriculture. I don't know how much more you would like to hear about insects, but yeah.
We haven't got time to go into the huge technology of that at the moment, but I'm interested in the idea that an aspect of scalable urban farming might be able to come into a proposal like this.
Yeah, and I think the plots that we're proposing could sort of be allocated to local business and to play and local residents. I think these plots could harness, you know, agriculture for sure, and part of the scheme is about ecology and protecting habitats and introduce greening and green corridors along these streets. So ecology in agriculture is part of it, and it is the future of having a sustainable city. And I think surely London's status as a national park city is going to play to our favour in this one.
I think it is. That, I think, is an excellent point at which to halt this mini interview. So thank you very much, Naomi Rubbra and Leopold Taylor of People Matter, and we look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.